President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has agreed to consider a new constitution for Nigeria following a meeting with a group of eminent Nigerians known as the Patriots. The group, led by former Commonwealth Secretary General Chief Emeka Anyaoku, presented a proposal for a new national constitution, or constituent assembly, to draft a new constitution. The Patriots emphasized the need for a democratic people's constitution to address the country's political and economic challenges, including separatist agitations, insecurity, and national protest. They also urged the president to initiate a national dialogue with leaders of nationwide protests and to refrain from using lethal weapons on protesters.
And this is not a group that you ignore. It's a group of patriots reflecting the heart and aspiration of the society, listening to the past cries of constitutional reform. Yes, I've had your examples and a thoughtful presentation on this subject. I'm still preoccupied with thinking and tinkering with the economic reform. That's my first priority. Once I get that reform in place as soon as possible, then I look at other options. The option of constitutional review, as recommended by you, and other options of learned minds in this country.
Well, joining us to discuss this, we do have in the studio with us political analyst Nelson Ekujimi. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And we also have joining us virtually, Mr. Dayo Akintobi also joins us. Thank you for being here this morning, gentlemen. Let's go straight into the conversation. There are indeed clarity, or you could say statements made clear that the current Nigerian constitution was indeed drafted and handed down by the military regime, and it's high time that there should be a change. Let me start off first with you, Mr. Ekujimi. Do you think that the president has what it takes to carry out this request to put out and ensure that there's a new formulation of a new constitution?
Well, thank you very much. I think first and foremost, I want to disagree with your opening statement that the president has agreed. The president never agreed, if you listen to him. He said, now I'm preoccupied with economic issues. After that, I will look at your requests, like also the requests of other Nigerians. Yes, I agree that our constitution needs to be reviewed, and which the National Assembly has been doing periodically. But by and large, you recognize that we've had different constitutional assembly or conferences. Even civil society organizations even had one called the Pronaco Draft Constitution. So these Nigerians who have gone to Mr. President to voice their concerns about the state of the nation, you can be rest assured that as I'm sitting down here, when I saw them visit Mr. President, I was also thinking, which we are also going to do. I'm also a member of, I'm also in the class of eminent Nigerians. So we also have our own view about this issue. So they have exercised their rights, just like every other Nigerian also has a right too. But most importantly, I want to believe strongly that the 11th National Assembly, like we currently have, the Senate and the House of Representatives, will soon embark on the constitutional review, process. So for me, they are going there does not take anything away from the fact that the review of the Constitution to ensure that it aligns with the socio-economic realities of the Nigerian people, comes into fruition. And, that is what we are interested in.
All right. We'll have Dayo Akintobi also join us and share his views. Mr. Akintobi, quickly, your thoughts on the idea of a constitutional review. I've seen and heard arguments that say that we don't necessarily need to review the Constitution. I remember that former President Muhammadu Buhari did make some adjustments and sign some bills that seemed like it was a constitutional review here and there, granting independence to State House of Assembly and the judiciary and whatnot. But the argument really is that we have a constitution that could work. What we don't have is governments that respect the tenets of the Constitution. And that's where our challenge is. What are your thoughts, with regards to that?
Well, truth be told, there's no constitution in the world that can guarantee good governance, which is what we all want at the end of the day. So whether it's the constitution we currently apply to our lives or a restructured constitution, at the end of the day, good governance comes before any kind of a constitution. And that's what we can't guarantee by virtue of writing a new one. So yes, the whole idea about the fact that this constitution was foisted upon us by the military, it wasn't democratically debated and upheld, and many of its tenets seem to be against the dictates of a pluralistic society. It's clearly divisive. It doesn't encourage unity. It has a lot of flaws. And as you said, previous governments have attempted to correct some of its flaws, but this is cherry picking some of the low-hanging fruits that don't create a wholesale realignment or readjustment of the document itself. And so it looks like a complete rewriting is what is in order, but are we ever going to get that? I'm not really sure, because at the end of the day, the politicians who have the wherewithal to enable us come up with a new document, it works against their own interest. This notion of restructuring, devolution of power, they see it as diminishing their individual power. What we are seeking to do is to reduce the power of the individual politicians, and they are against that. So I wasn't surprised when the president said, economic reform is my focus at this point in time. I really don't have time to address your issue now, but I'll put it on the back burner and get back to it when I put it to you that economic reform is not something that's going to be solved in 3 years. So I don't see where the president will actually have the kind of will to push this thing through, because he's a politician just like everybody in the National Assembly is as well. And so it works against his interest for this constitution to be changed. So he probably will offer us a sop here and there whereby they'll amend one or two tenets that don't take away from the core things that are the interests of the politicians.
All right. Let's look at the process that's also being requested for by this group known as the Patriots. I mean, they're saying that there should be a constituent assembly where 3 persons are picked from the 36 states to represent each state, and all will converge on Abuja and take a look at this constitution that needs to be reformed. Mr. Ekujimi, let me come to you again. 3 persons per state to form this constituent assembly. Does that really seem like what will work?
Well, I'm as confused as you are, and maybe other Nigerians. Because if you are talking about a constitution that will emanate from the people like the Patriots, a posture, you expect that they should have said election of this. So who does the selection?
They said the selection, the people should be non-political.
They can look at any human being and decide or interrogate and discover that it's non-political. I don't agree with them. Like I've just told you, we've had series of constitutional conference, committees, you can name it. What is wrong with us saying these reports, look at the recommendations, take it to the National Assembly and let them, do their job? Because the National Assembly is a product of the democratic will of the Nigerian people. They hold our mandate. These persons who have made this suggestion, I want to tell you for free, they don't represent the will of the Nigerian people because they don't have a mandate. They are making a personal group opinion on it, just like I'm doing right here. So if we want what we are all clamoring for, we want a democratic constitution that will emanate from the people, then let the people themselves decide, let people put themselves up for election, let the people vote them. But if you ask me, I would say we've had enough of this constitution making jamboree, because you can be rest assured that even some of the members of these Patriots, when it comes to picking, some of them will be picked because they are advantaged.
Yeah.
So don't.
If you call it, before you go on, if you call it a jamboree,
Yeah.
are you saying that you don't believe that we should have any adjustments to the constitution, or you don't think it's necessary to beat around the bush before doing it? We should just go straight to it. And then also, what adjustments would you recommend to the current administration if they were going to make a constitutional amendment?
One thing we must all recognize and acknowledge is that this president is somebody who believes in the restructuring of the Nigerian state. He has clamored for it all through the years, even during the days of the military dictatorship. But the fact remains that we've had, I'm voicing my opinion. You know, the Patriots went to him, and I'm here making my own presentation.
Absolutely.
I believe our constitution is not perfect. Just like you can never have a perfect constitution anywhere in the world. Our constitution is not cast in stone. That is why the National Assembly at every legislative cycle does a constitutional review. Nigerians, what are those lacuna that you have observed in the constitution? Can we discuss them? And you have seen the former president did a sort of a restructuring. Somehow, you talked about the issue about state police, which even the present administration is latching onto. You talked about autonomy of local government that we have seen. You talked about power generation that was formerly on the exclusive list, but is now on the concurrent list. Those are things we have all clamored for. That look, we shouldn't have a centralized system in a federal republic. So I don't believe in this beating about the bush, because I understand the issues, and the issues are that we've had series of conferences, we've had reports. Why don't we go to the National Assembly and say, look at these documents, look at where they address the issues of the Nigerian people, and do the needful. So, but telling us that you should have a constituent assembly of 3 picked by, are they going to be picked by Nelson? Except if you are going to allow me to pick them.
Well, maybe when we have one of the guests join us, then the further explanation can be given. But then again, let's also get your thoughts on this, Mr. Akintobi.
Yes, the Patriots actually did say that they would like a process that looks at the 1960 and 1963 Constitution and also takes a look at the recommendations of the 2014 Constitution Committee put together by the Jonathan administration. So I don't think they were saying start completely from scratch. And of course, they just put forward some recommendations that can be tweaked. The fact that they had an idea that 3 people from each state and 1 lawyer from each region, that can be adjusted. That's not cast in stone. I think the 60 and 63 Constitution is a good starting point. Some of the recommendations of that Justice Kutigi-led conference also resonated with the people. Many Nigerians have admired some of the recommendations and have recommended that they be uptaken. So as Nelson has said, what's wrong with taking those recommendations to the National Assembly and letting them deliberate and decide on behalf of the people? Do we really need to go through such a cumbersome and expensive exercise of electing people to a constitutional conference? I mean, process is important, yes, but for it to be a truly democratic document, it's got to be the will of the people. And at the moment, the people do have there are elected representatives in place who can speak for them. So I do align with Nelson's thinking that why not push it to the National Assembly? I believe it will die a natural death there anyway, because as I said earlier, I think it works against the interest of the National Assembly.
And that's a good point that you're making, because I remember that there was the national conference in the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan government that was discarded by the Buhari administration. They had their own reasons for not looking at it. But a couple of points were made in that national conference that many Nigerians argued would have maybe set Nigeria on a better footing if it was implemented. Do you, from your perspective, does the current National Assembly represent the Nigerian people? Do you believe that it speaks the interest of the Nigerian people as headed by Senate President, the current Senate President?
Well, let me tell you this. There is no politician or group of politicians that sit to represent the people's interest first. Their primary interest is to themselves prior to thinking about the people. So probably you should rephrase that question and say, is the present National Assembly more inclined towards representing the people or speaking for the people than previous national assemblies? And I would say I haven't seen any difference since 2023. I haven't seen any difference in governance today from previous times. I would even venture to say we're actually worse off today based on what our representatives are doing than we were in the past. So I don't really foresee a wholesale change. I see more of the status quo, not just from this administration and our representatives, but even from the next one. I see more of the same, because a wholesale readjustment just doesn't work to their benefit. And so until more and more groups like the Patriots, more and more individuals begin to clamor for this total change, and I think the way to do it is at the ballot box. I think we're not holding those who campaign to hold our suffrages, we're not holding them to account enough when they are campaigning. I think come 2027, we should begin to ask questions of the people who put themselves forward to represent us in terms of this notion of restructuring. Those who are there now, I don't think there's any of them we can hold to a promise. Look at the president, for example. He campaigned on the notion of restructuring. He promised he would look at it. He's doing some things. He's talked about state police. He's talked about some other things. And even the previous administration did one or two things relating to moving things from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. But wholesale restructuring, we haven't really begun to see any major moves towards it. So I think we, the people, it's incumbent upon us to make it happen. If we're waiting for other people to do it, those in power to do it, it's never going to happen. So I think the Patriots have made a good first step. The rest of us should now begin to follow up, begin to apply pressure, begin to prepare ourselves for 2027, and let the people who want to represent us in 2027 begin to state their positions today as to what they would do about a new constitution if they are elected into office.
Yeah, well, I just fear that we're not there yet. I would like to see a Nigeria where the reasons presidents are elected into office are because of the principles that they stand by and the ideas that they have. But unfortunately, we're not there yet, if we're being honest. Ms. Ekujimi, let's have you, of course, share your thoughts with regards to that. The representation of the Nigerian people by the current members of the National Assembly, do you believe in them? Do you trust that they have the interests of the Nigerian people, including Senator Godswill Akpabio, who's the Senate President, and the members of the House of Representatives?
Well, thank you very much. I believe strongly that the Nigerian people are politically, conscious enough to elect people to represent them, and I will see it as an insult on the collective intelligence of Nigerian people for anybody to say those that the people elected them in error. For example, as I'm sitting down here, I'm educated enough. And on election day, I went to the poll and I elected these persons to represent my interests. So for you to now say they will be representing other interests than my mandate that I've given them, I disagree with
Yeah,
you.
but the thing really is, what were the principles that you listened to that made you
Well,
elect
the principles
you're
that were
speaking
that
about?
the things they were going to do, they campaigned on different, election was done in different constituencies, and our problems are not the same. Like we say, what is one man's meat is another man's poison. So my representative that I voted for,
Yeah.
they are representing my interests. You talked about
Now, what is
just a
the
minute,
interest?
just a minute. You talked about, do they represent the Nigerian people that you are talking about? What is their own interest? The elected representatives, did they fall down from the moon? Are they not part of our family, our friends, our relations? Don't we live in the same community?
No, but
so,
what I'm trying to be clear on is your House of Rep member
yes,
for your local government.
Yes.
What did he say that convinced you that he's representing your interest? Same thing with the senator representing you.
he campaigned on a manifesto, and I aligned with that manifesto because
what were the things in the manifesto?
well, he want me to start itemizing them.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to open my phone for you to see.
No. I mean, because if you say you were
He
convinced,
talked about good governance.
what is good governance?
Good governance is about holding consultative dialogue with your constituents at every time. If they are pressing issues, then you go back there and place it before the other members of the national. And it doesn't mean if you have a proposal that it will see the light of the day over there, because every representative in the National Assembly are representing their constituents' interests. So it is about you negotiating. It is about you dialoguing with them that, look, this thing that I want to bring to you, maybe, for example, you are talking about, establishment of boreholes or maybe primary health care centers. I'm using that as a case study.
Which is what is usually done.
Yes. So it is for you to convince them why we should align with this. Because if a primary health center is cited in my local government, you can be rest assured that that bill will not be a bill for my own constituency alone. It will be a national law.
These are broad terms. Apologies, Dayo Akintobi. We're going to wrap up in a bit, but these are broad terms. What I'm trying to be specific on is, what were the things that your senator said that convinced you that he is the right person to lead you and other members of
what my senator said that convinced me to cast my lot with him, just like other
Who's
people.
the senator?
My senator is a Senator Idiat Oluwanti Adebule. I come from the Lagos West.
Okay.
Yes.
So what were the things that
I looked at that pedigree, and I looked at those things within the purview of a legislature that he promised to do.
Now, what are the things? What are the things?
Oh, bringing the issue of dividends of democracy to my people in terms of making bills or making laws for the good governance of the country.
And has that been achieved so far?
In a year, out of a 4-year tenure?
No, I mean, even previously, before her, there was someone else there.
Yes.
Has all of these things from the promise?
No, you see, the mistake we make is that we are looking for quick fix.
Okay.
Yes, but I believe that we are in this vehicle, and we also must recognize that we have a responsibility to put them on their toes. But if you think because you have voted them in, you should go to sleep and expect miracle to happen tomorrow morning, then you must be an analyst.
So the person representing you in the Senate simply said they would bring the dividends of democracy, and
which
that was
is
enough.
Embodied in a basket. You know what?
So if anybody, that's what I'm saying. So if anybody,
do you expect me to tell you that she said she's going to give me employment?
So 2027.
No, I mean, there has to be certain things that they would speak about.
Yes.
That you can say, okay, this represents my interest. So if anybody, so what you're saying is that anybody who says to you, I will bring you dividends of democracy.
Yes, and she will speak in the specifics.
But you fail to name those specifics. That's the problem.
What do you expect? You expect me to tell you that she's going to build roads in my local government? Is that her responsibility? That's the responsibility of the executive.
Dayo Akintobi,
as is lawmaking.
Thank you very much. What I'm just trying to highlight here is the fact that we elect people in office without actually knowing what the little details. I mean, if you look at, and it's not comparing us to the United States because that might be too far, but if you look at the little details with which they interview every candidate that is running for election in the United States, they want to know their values. They want to know what their thoughts are on maternal mortality, on infant mortality, on human development index, human capacity, HDI. They want to know those little details, what they think about religion, what they think about children. Those little details. But in Nigeria, and this is what I'm trying to establish with Mr. Ekujimi here, that there's nothing. We have the people that he's speaking about, that he's proud of, that represent him. He's not been able to identify one thing and point out one thing, that this is the thing that has convinced me that this person represents my interests and the interests of millions of other people with regards the improvement of our lives. A broad dividends of democracy really doesn't cut it. But thanks a lot, Nelson Ekujimi. I always enjoy speaking with you. We always have this back and forth.
Yes.
Dayo Akintobi, thank you very much for your time as well. We'll see you again soon.